would like to present about flow state, which is a state of optimal performance cognitively, which allows us to perform at our best, to be far more creative, far more innovative, far more productive than in normal states. And it's something that everybody, most people can learn, and that around half of us can relatively easily access. And that's therefore probably the most useful soft skill to have. We are about to create flow state workshops. And what I'm presenting is a best of mix of the materials that we are using for these flow state workshops that we give mainly to corporate customers. So I would like to start with the slides. So this is the overall presentation, and I'm going to give you some best of ideas, and you're free to ask questions in between, and of course at the end also. So this flow state is here an optimal state of consciousness, a peak state where we both feel our best and perform our best. It's a transformation available to anyone, everywhere, provided that certain initial conditions are met, and say that the people don't have any major psychological issues. For example, a quote: "When you go to that place, there's no time and there's definitely no thought. You are, and it is, and that's why we continually seek it out." So this is probably the most important soft skill, and it's a peak performance state. It entails typically selflessness, effortlessness, richness, and timelessness, also called CERT, which is characteristic. And in its type, it's highly dependent on personality, on one's preferred sports, preferred music, video, and intellectual preferences. And there are a number of preconditions and supporting conditions around this. And that's why we train people based on their personality, job role, and other things to really maximize the key performance indicators to, as efficiently as possible, bring people into flow state, depending on what kind of personalities they have. And it's actually where self-help books are wrong. It's not true that you become more successful when you get up earlier, sleep less, and add funny daily routines. It's really deeper things that make you more productive. So there are different formal definitions of flow state, and they are evolving. So it's commonly or colloquially known as being in the zone, or for example, runner's high in athletics, or being unconscious in basketball, being in the pocket for jazz musicians, or in the forever box for stand-up comedy. So this is basically how stand-up comedians memorize their puns and the fun they're saying, and what it involves. So it's technically taking place in the brain's frontal lobe, mostly, also called hypofrontality. And it's when those areas desynchronize with areas responsible for self-referential processing. So basically free thinking in simple terms. So the benefits of flow state are up to 5 times higher productivity, up to 7 times higher creativity. And actually this has been shown in studies. For example, this in a Deloitte study, that people have up to 5 times higher productivity. So up to 7 times higher creativity. And this is getting more important as AI is advancing, because we humans can be far more creative than AI can be. Right now, AI is basically not creative, just recombining existing elements. It might become a little bit creative, but we have the opportunity to, for several decades, still be more creative than AIs. And so that's our strong position. So even, or especially in times of AI taking over some jobs, flow state is probably even more so the most important soft skill, or is becoming it even more so, because we can leverage our creativity with it. And we can also learn up to 5 times more efficiently and memorize and have up to 2 times more work satisfaction in a time where generally work satisfaction is typically dropping. So for example, McKinsey confirmed this, that we can be 5 times more productive in flow. And as an example, if we manage to be 2 out of 5 times at work in flow in a single week, then we have 10 times more productivity. So meaning than the normal people who are not in flow at all. So meaning 2 times each 500%, meaning 5x, is 1,000%. So I mean 10 times more productive than classical organizations, which typically lose 1 day to bureaucracy and inefficient cooperation, inefficient communication, inefficient meetings, and so on. So this is competition crushing. So then there's many other benefits, like one can dream up the future, which is also important in our times. We can score the highest regarding life satisfaction, and those who are top in these categories have the highest percentage of flow in their lives. So in deep flow, also anxiety disappears. What John wrote some books about how to get beyond fear. So flow is also a way how to lose fear. Technically, it involves 5 of the most important neurochemicals. Flow can produce norepinephrine, dopamine, endorphins, anandamide, and serotonin. And this is scientifically proven. So flow really exists and can be trained. And there are scientifically proven ways how to optimize for a maximal flow state. However, it's part to or subject to ongoing research. And what we're probably doing for the first time is to collect the maximal amount of latest research to extract the really actionable, practical elements how to actually get people into flow state. And that's a lot of work that I have not seen that others have been doing. So we can allow much faster learning. A US military study has shown that that the learning rates of snipers and radar operators in flow increased by 470%. And one can cut to the 10,000 hours to mastery known from Malcolm Gladwell in half. Yeah. So these are other benefits. When we can make activities more enjoyable, improve performance, better learning and skill development, persistence and achievement in these activities can be elevated. We can develop less anxiety and raise self-esteem. And one emerges from such flow experience with a bit of personal growth and feelings of competence and efficacy. And, yeah, by increasing time spent in flow, intrinsic motivation and self-directed learning also increases. So all key elements. This shifted a bit. So I don't like this. So this is actually a scientific study that exists. Maybe I put it into the chat so that everybody can validate this, that it's truly truly scientific. This one I don't. So they did this study, and then another key element was to address all 5 sources of meaning in the corporate or team strategy: the company, the society, the customer, the working team, and oneself in flow state, which is also very important in corporate settings. Yeah, so even Greylock partners, the venture capitalists, even proposed new key performance indicators or management metrics based on flow. And so they propose to have a flow percentage of work, because it takes 15 minutes to get back into flow once one has been interrupted. So it allows to be 5 times more productive if there are no interruptions and no other reasons why people get out of flow. And they try to achieve that knowledge workers can spend 30 to 50% of their time in flow. And they propose to measure this. And there's an optimized anxiety boredom continuum. One can meet a better promoter score. One can compound the weekly learning rate. So the idea is to get better 1% each week across all aspects that are relevant for one's work, and also measure the positive versus negative interaction ratio. There should now be 5 times as many positive interactions as negative ones, because people are more competent, more knowledgeable, more creative, and therefore should interact better. So this modern flow research pretty much started with Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, which came up with this metrics that flow is a state of being between a state of control, of being happy and confident, and a state of arousal, of alert and being focused. And one can enter into flow state generally from these 2 other states. So for example, one can try to first get into a state of control and then into flow, or first get into a state of arousal, for example, also through sports, or being stoked for what one is going to do, downhill skiing or so, and then get into flow that way. Yeah, so the commonalities are being focused on the current moment, then either through deep concentration or deep thinking, or through something repetitive, or what one masters, get into flow, and then let the mind go wander. These are the typical paths. Then recent research has shown there are different flow personality types. The main types are these first 5. Yes, exactly. That's also why you get ideas while vacuuming, because then you have some kind of bore out flow, and your mind drifts away. It's exactly this. So the main personalities are these first 5, and while vacuuming, this is more the bore out variant of getting into flow. So then there's generally the meditators, also called flow goers, who get into flow through meditation and possible process elements, NLP, and neuro-linguistic programming. Then there's the athlete types. So it can also be basically just people doing sports in their spare time. You don't have to be a professional athlete. This is typically done through action sports. So having to focus or having automated activity, like when running, this is getting boring, and then the mind starts to wander. And it's also called hard chargers, this type. Then there's the group thinkers, who typically have typically creative sessions about brainstorming typically. And they get into through these sessions, through talking and ideating, into flow. And they're also called crowd pleaser. And then there's the deep thinkers, who get into flow through deep concentration and thinking. And then there's the dreamers, who, as we said, people typically have a main category and a 1 or 2 secondary categories of personality type. So dreamers get into this through bore out, through hypnotization, or through listening to music and for example, visualizing the music, or dreaming of a vacation with that music, or watching certain videos or drawing. And then there's miscellaneous properties. For example, there are people who get into flow through journaling, which is basically writing one's ideas down and then going from one idea to the next in a creative way. Craftspeople who do one thing very well, for example, repairing small watches and with attention to detail. Yeah, or people who develop one area of mastery and get into flow through that, be it in music or special types of work. And then one can also take neurochemicals and drugs. Yeah, okay, and through certain games, of course, yes, one can also get into flow things. So, however, that is dangerous. So some, yeah, some drugs can help with flow state. For example, LSD is said to help with flow. And having a few deep skills or being in a certain way slightly neurotic, then so when not having so many deep skills, at the point, or being slightly neurotic, then one might have difficulty to get into flow. However, with coaching and certain techniques, one can still get into flow. And then there's orthogonal factors to these personalities. If one is good in accessing creativity in hypnagogia, that's a state before falling asleep. That's another type, how to get into flow and a variant of it. If one is highly danger attentive or has attention deficit disorder, yeah, versus being confident. So the confident get easier into flow. However, for these first two types, there are exercises to get into flow still and to distract their monkey mind, so to say. Then through one's preferred learning or working style, one can get into flow. There's, for example, the preferred visual working style, auditive or kinesthetic working style. And it's actually, latest science says it's not the learning styles, it's just a preference. So latest science says everybody typically can learn through visual impressions. However, some prefer kinesthetic or auditive. Yeah, and then possibly the one's music taste. For example, there are classical works like the Moldau, which visualizes people in a boat going along the river Moldau and seeing different types of people and activities at the Moldau shore. And that classical piece basically has elements of what these people are doing along the shore. And if one is deeply involved into that music, one can mentally visualize what they are doing, like cutting grass and other farm work, or a celebration, a wedding, and so on. One can hear it in the music and visualize it. And while visualizing it from the music, one can easily get into flow. It's similar with impro jazz, with gentle rock and pop music, and especially binaural beats, with trance music or melodic electronic dance music, EDM. And also, what type of video audio mesmerizes people most? So especially this autotelic personality is associated with flow state. Autotelic means that is a person which means self and motivated towards goal. So autotelic comes from self and goal oriented. So being self motivated towards achieving a goal. So this includes curiosity, persistence, low self-centeredness, and high rates of performing activities for intrinsic reason only. So that one is self-motivated. That leads to higher flow state percentages. So it's recommendable to cultivate these aspects in one's personality. Yeah, and then there's the balance between skills of the individual and the demands of the tasks. So the so-called challenge skills ratio elicits flow experiences in individuals characterized by an internal locus of control. So feeling control over outcomes of events in one's life, or habitual action orientation. So several studies have found the need for achievement to be a personal characteristic that that then leads to flow experiences. So then there's then one can get more psychological strength and determination by going beyond one's comfort zone. So it's generally advisable to spend time with that optimal challenge skills ratio I said before. So this is a difficult, tremendously hard stomach-turning, anxiety-provoking state if the challenges are high. However, it's worth staying there, taking the effort and the risk to develop a better, or say more robust character. So this then optimizes confidence, being calm, being able to focus, trusting oneself, resilience, optimism, locus on control, and grit. And actually, latest research has shown that grit is defined by Angela Duckworth as persistence and passion towards long-term goals. And it has shown that one can only develop passion when one has the money required to follow one's passion, and therefore actually persistence and conscientiousness towards long-term goals is even more efficient for people who have to look at funds, basically, who cannot always just follow their passions. For the normal citizen, perseverance and conscientiousness is even a more successful element in life success, and combined with flow state. So with free perseverance, conscientiousness, and flow state are probably the top 3 properties towards success in life. Then there's a development of 3D virtual reality flow induction. So having virtual flow rooms. I'm working on that. For example, for meditators, we have collected mesmerizing videos and generating some, for example, examples are on mesmerica.com. And yeah, for athletes, one can do virtual downhill skiing, snowboarding. For group flows, a virtual group discussion with group genius and so on. And also for these various other personalities, one can do a lot in virtual reality, like for the dreamers, for the journalers, for craftsmen and so on. And that is in time of pandemics, Zoom, internet, and so on, is a very, very promising way to bring people through virtual flow rooms into flow state. For deep thinkers, one can visualize architecture, structures, and flow, design, and so on. And then we collected different induction mechanisms for physical flow rooms, meaning for workshops that we do within companies, how we induce flow state for these various personalities. And this is just a top-level overview. There are other ways. And for example, there for deep thinkers, so this is a mind map. There are more methods to get them into flow, like these. So visualizing Munich, etc. So the science of flow state actually reaches back to Albert Heim in 1871. Then William James, Walter Bradford Cannon, Abraham Maslow, and the modern reinventor was Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, who just died, I think, around 2 years ago. And he found that flow is universal and published many books about it, especially in the direction of happiness, achieving flow through happiness or maximizing one's happiness through flow. And for example, McKinsey described it. When we ask executives how much more productive they were at their peak performance flow state than they were on average, the most common at senior levels is an increase of 5 times. So, and yeah, other positive quotes. So we have several important brain states, and it's also important to manage the order how we get into flow. So say we are in a relatively recovered state initially, for example, then we might get into a struggle, for example, when starting to do downhill skiing or starting to run, like in jogging. Then we get used to it. We release the struggle, neurochemicals, and then we can get into flow state. So when we're comfortable jogging, comfortable downhill skiing, and so on, then we can get into flow. However, then we also need some recovery afterwards. And it's typically like clockwise, these 4 states, one after each other. And one has to manage it. One can normally, as a not so perfectly trained person, one cannot normally not be perfect 100% in flow. However, once one trains this for a longer time, it might be possible to have a very high percentages of flow. And or some people state they can stay all day in flow. So that recovery is just that, yeah, like after sports, that you just relax and maybe sit or lie and have a coffee or talk to people, joke a bit, just stop that thinking that you had going on in flow state. So all brain regions need some relaxation, basically. Yeah, you're welcome again. So enter this aspect of flow being at the right point of the challenge skills ratio. So here the challenges, here the skills. So as in both sides, there's boredom and there's anxiety if the challenge is too high, boredom if the challenge is too low. And we are typically in flow when the ratio between these two is just right. So, and similar to these 4 states of mind, we have 4 forces of ecstasis: the neurobiology, the psychology, technology, like taking like technical means how to get into flow, and pharmacology, taking drugs like LSD. And flow is typically a state in the high performance triangle. So a combination of creativity, learning, motivation. And inside this part, flow state is optimized. So in this inner part of the triangle. In venture sport, we typically have a rich environment which contributes to flow. High consequences, meaning, again, for example, downhill skiing, if we do it wrong, we break our legs or so, which is a high negative consequence. However, that leads to peak arousal, which is an element that brings us into flow, and deep embodiment. So, for example, neurokinesthetic programming, hedonic engineering, somatic triggers, and autotelic drive. So there's an interesting infographic about flow. So this is overview of the most productive state. It's the mental state to calm our mind. And for example, for people with ADD who are easily distracted, they need some techniques to tame the monkey mind. And with these techniques, they then can get into flow, and especially regular meditation can improve that focus. We should eliminate distractions. So turn off all notifications, for example, and also internal distractions. And we should no longer pursue instant gratification. For example, not fall victim to clickbaits. So interesting sounding news and or possible scandals or celebrity news and so on. But instead we should foster our sense for delayed gratification. So, for example, also close unnecessary tabs. Focus on one thing at a time, and then the next thing without distractions from clickbait notifications and so on. Yeah, put this smartphone into a different room or back ideally. In any case, turn off notifications. Deprive yourself of potential distractions. It often helps to do daily journaling of these small thoughts, to not forget them and to not be anxious about forgetting these small things. And possibly even make a list of URLs to visit if you find these headlines interesting, but don't follow everything immediately. So this flow should be a generator of high quality ideas and should not be a storage space for ideas, but instead a notepad should be used to store them. And techniques to tame the monkey mind and focus at the core elements that count. So these are typical sources of distraction: social media, food, Netflix, email, video games, instant messaging, and so on. And these distractions are also addictive by design. That's why it's quite hard to defocus on them. Yeah, and if these distractions are easy to reach, then you will get distracted. So put all distractions out of the way. So this can then cause the brain to release dopamine when basically being in flow and having some successes, learning things. So because the mind is always looking for the path of least resistance, and you must scale between news, like looking at news with instant reward, and work with delayed gratification. So focus on delayed gratification and, for example, the long-term reward of work you're doing. And there's different learning styles, and so these first don't work. So so there's a fantasy that one can get from one peak moment to the next that typically doesn't work. So it's just a fantasy. Then these dabblers chase shiny objects, but then crash. It doesn't work well. The obsessive ones push and then crash. And you see here they have difficulty getting better and then crash. The hackers accept the mediocre outcomes. And what is typically best is to master the plateaus, to get from one plateau to the next, to the next, to the next. And become better and better that way. So then this is a very detailed metrics of how to get into flow. So this involves all these aspects. So let's so the idea is you have different approaches how to, for example, for neurochemical elements. So the pre-conventional approach is to have delta brainwaves. The conventional approach is to get into beta brainwaves. The post-conventional one is to focus on alpha brainwaves. However, the integrated approach is to move from theta to gamma and being elective about one's brainwaves, to be able to kick oneself into flow state and other highly useful states. So this is a more scientific way. So in other aspects, so the optimal way is always the last one. Maybe I go just through the recommended state. So neuroanatomically, it's best to have an integrative elective state instead of amygdala hijacks or just transient hypofrontality, to have a coherent heart rate. So a special heart rate variability, and there's also trackers for that. The endocrine system should be dominated by anandamide and tryptamines. The postural element should be polyaxial, like when doing like yoga. That's typically optimal for flow state. Dynamic respiratory states psychologically be self-authoring instead of having a fixed mind or growth mindset. Better than growth mindset is self-authoring. And temporally, one should be polychronic, meaning losing a sense of time and be in the deep now. Or in other ways, flow state is when the subconsciousness takes over, or when you shower, or when like Albert Einstein used to go on his boat and be in the calm of the lake to get his best ideas, or take a walk and then through bore out, for example, get into flow. Regarding brain anatomy, we have an unconscious mind, and we can access that through meditation. And we have a subconscious mind that's dominated by alpha and theta brainwaves. And there we can use flow state and critical thinking and telling the subconsciousness what to ponder about. And then use these elements for the border between the conscious mind with beta brainwaves to the subconscious mind with alpha and theta brainwaves. And flow state is typically associated with the theta brainwaves. And we can access this through meditation also. And here in the conscious mind, we have things that we should move beyond, like saying that we aren't good enough, spending more time here, like needing willpower to spend more time. So here one requires effort and energy, like intellectualism. It can be a stress source. The idea is to go beyond these negative elements of having a stress source, of needing to have willpower and the energy behind that, to move at an effortless place with meditation, other flow state triggers, to then use elements of the subconscious mind more, and get through that way into flow state, for example, deep thought, be able to think about life solutions without the energy required if one needs a high amount of willpower. So instead of building habits, for example, it's also better to build instead self-healing powers, focus on gut healing, inner peace, and so on. Mental imaginary. And then when one trains enough, one can possibly even access the unconscious mind a bit. For example, in dreams or in very deep meditation, that is then possibly one's highest self, spiritual connections, the core of who you are, the automatic functions, and can lead to incredible benefits. So this is a deeply scientific model of the properties one can achieve in these different states. And to those people who are not trained, they typically only operate here in this unconscious mind during daytime, and don't. So of course, some automatic bodily function works for them. However, they don't actively access these strengths that are here, part of the subconscious and unconscious mind. And leveraging them can make you far more successful in life. So then here into the mind of flow. So we train people to achieve an optimized flow this way. So some short-term actions like meditative, hypnotic, and mesmerizing ways how to get into flow. Then to meet more supporting and preconditions, for example, enforcing and improving these skills and learning new skills towards the goal of long-term flow maximization and optimization. Then to develop some mastery or develop more mastery, then to enforce and improve these skills and get to this towards this desirable flow state. And build up class 3 to class 1 flow state capabilities that again enforce, improve these. And yeah, over the time scale, over time, improve these skills in these directions. So what we do is here typically people have some initial skills regarding flow, for example, have achieved it through some athletic activities like runner's high or vacuum cleaning or so. So by accident have gotten into flow state, but often can't reproduce it, except for possible runner's high and so on, when running a lot. And there we start with the first workshop to put people on the track to success and develop far more flow state skills. Then create a weekly or ideally daily training schedule to do things at home, meaning learning, practicing further prerequisites and techniques, and then a second flow state workshop to correct errors and connect the dots of what people learned and answer questions. And then again, weekly, ideally daily training and perfecting the practices. Now, for professional athletes, this is also called mental training, and with a focus on training, also for athletes. So even they, though they are typically like this, have this athlete flow state personality, they still need to typically do 1 hour or more daily of flow state training. And this is how they optimize their skills. And you sometimes might hear that they say they're in the tunnel or they're preparing for their contest, have certain rituals to prepare for a contest. And this is typically associated to maximize flow state. And then here's this idea to optimize for synchronicities or to reflect and seize more opportunities. So one should be more open, then listen to things, first mentally actively and then mentally passively, process things one experiences, especially in one's subconsciousness using pattern recognition, and then seize opportunities, typically synchronicities. And if one goes with like open eyes through the world like this, is open to pretty much any idea and everything that happens around you, then you can typically maximize opportunities in your life or maximize synchronicities, as some people say. And that, of course, can make people far more successful. Yeah, so we have developed categorization tests, what type of learner people are, like what they prefer, visual, auditive, touching, meaning kinesthetic, writing, experiencing, feelings, what methods they have to get into flow state, what type of meditation techniques they prefer, what principles of, for example, brain-centric design work best for them. That's actually some techniques how to learn efficiently and which brain areas to access, for example, learning visually or in other ways or through experience and through practical work, other ways, and what type of questions to ask, how to repeat, and how to ponder things. That can optimize how to get into flow state. Yeah, and one can try to find heightened state of consciousness, not necessarily flow state, as a warm-up exercise to get into some other topic or into flow state for learning. So, and then there's the concept of lucid dreaming. So this lucid dreaming is basically dreaming where you become aware that you are dreaming and then can influence your dream. And the key thing is that you can access the creativity associated with dreams. So you can use that creativity not to dream about garbage things, but to dream about useful things. ideally inventions. And actually these following inventions were due to like this lucid dreaming and led to really big breakthroughs and even several Nobel Prizes. For example, the DNA's double helix was due to dreaming, the benzene ring. Many startup ideas, for example, in Silicon Valley, it's also why they focus on flow state. Then, yeah, LSD is in the 1960s. So these Nobel Prize winners admitted that they used an LSD. So for Francis Crick invented the structure of DNA. Carrie Banks Mullis amplified the sections of DNA. Richard Feynman, quantum electrodynamics. Yeah, Bob Dylan regarding music and lyrics, and they used that. And also Steve Jobs and Aldous Huxley admitted to also taking some drugs. I don't recommend taking drugs, but use flow state instead. Yeah. Okay, yeah, thank you, Lorraine. So, and especially in chemistry, genetics, molecular biotech, and so on, there are standardized 3D visualizations for knowledge sharing and a common consciousness about these topics, and we use them in virtual reality then. And one can optimize and use standardization to more optimally and efficiently and more creatively think about these and combine that with flow state. So these are some other famous flow state users. For example, Björn of ABBA used Runner's High to come up with the songs of ABBA. Yeah, then we had these smart drugs like LSD, like these Nobel Prize winners. And then there's, yeah, in professional sports, basically all modern athletes use flow state. And flow state is systematically being taught to basically each Olympic team today. So to increase productivity, we on average spend only 5% of our work life in flow. Yeah, McKinsey found that we have 500% productivity increase and up to 700% creativity increase. E-learning or general learning can be 500% more efficient. Yeah, and everybody could earn several hundred thousands of dollars in the US. Yeah, even before finishing university, around 25, the old-fashioned way. That means if education would be systematically optimized for flow state, people at the age of 20 or 22 could basically have as much knowledge as they have nowadays at 25 and already earn $100,000 a year. Work satisfaction can be up to 200% higher. It's fundamentally trainable, flow state, and certain online courses lead to 70% increase in flow, regarding the 7 fundamental categories of flow. And Google tried it out in 6 weeks of training. 4 triggers for flow state produced a 35 to 80% increase in flow. So it's typically near the optimal state in the Maslow hierarchy. So regarding time, how long should I talk? Because I can now focus on some key elements and come to an end soon, or use so should I use 1.5 or the full 2 hours? How long should it go?
If you could use the 1.5 and then leave some time for reflection or clarification.
Yeah, okay. And then I now focus on some key elements. Yes, thank you. So the key preconditions, and so there's disagreement between the different like flow state teachers in schools. So some confuse preconditions and supporting conditions with flow state. So I'm more strict regarding triggers. For me, a trigger is something that really kicks people into flow state, ideally immediately or relatively efficiently. So therefore, I separate out preconditions. And some, in my opinion, incorrectly market preconditions as flow state triggers. So basically, without these preconditions, normal people don't get into flow, except of course, if you're highly trained and get easily into flow, then you don't necessarily need these preconditions. But as a normal person, who has not used flow explicitly before, you typically need these 5 preconditions and possibly some more. So meaning having a clear set of goals and in progress, work on a specific task, do something with a clear immediate feedback, for example, downhill skiing, or some other athletic activity, meditation, and so on, have the right challenge skills ratio, especially in athletics or regarding mastery, be in a healthy, attentive state, and eliminate all external distractions. Then there's highly desirable conditions, but not necessarily preconditions, meaning you can do without them. However, they are very recommended to have these conditions. So psychologically, you should forget about flow, meaning don't press or try to force flow state. It's like when wanting to fall asleep. If you want to fall asleep, you normally don't do it. And similarly with flow, then you normally don't get into flow. So have the right elements of passion and purpose, clear goals, immediate feedback, the right challenge skills ratios. So stay in your weight class regarding the type of problem. No hate, jealousy, or fear, and a growth mindset, or even a balanced mindset, if you've seen. So for athletes, it's high consequences, like instant feedback when downhill skiing, peak arousal, existential archetypal impact, or even mortal stakes, like when certain dangerous, say downhill skiing, or yeah, very dangerous action sports. Deep embodiment helps, so meaning embodied condition, neurokinesthetic programming, meaning the danger and the necessary focus kicks one into flow state. There's called something like hedonic engineering, meaning optimizing for fun in one's life. Personality and focus, it's important to have basically a simplified self, not to think too much about oneself, intrinsic motivation, somatic triggers like an autotelic drive, or also somatic conditions are these triggers are these surrounding conditions that kick one into flow state. Super egoic distanciation, which means looking at things from a distance with unattachment in a non-egotistic way. So even risking some personal damage or in love or compassion for others, and some sense of personal control, but however, not being a control freak, not too much, just a balanced sense for all these things. So socially, it's good to have shared clear goals or purposes, ideally in a team that helps with group flow, good communication, familiarity, equal participation, risk, and sense of control over the dynamic or group, and close listening, especially in group meetings, creative elements like creative and pattern recognition, capabilities to foster them, to like complexity and the corresponding balanced challenge skills ratio and some unpredictability, for example, also make it interesting, and environmentally, especially in action sports as apply, have a rich environment, like for example, big nature, natural sublime effect, and radical novelty of the surrounding, then cozy conditions like warm feet and body. So with cold feet and other distracting elements, it's harder to get into flow state. And then there's certain supporting conditions, dampen or eliminate internal distractions, do top things at one's biological peak time. That means for people who, yes, some people like to get up early, and directly after getting up, they have their peak time. Others have that peak time in the evening. Or other times, it depends on your personality. Listen to the right music, create mental cues like neuro-linguistic triggers, perform a steady path to mastery, learn, for example, 10-finger typing to not be distracted from typing, learning keyboard shortcuts in software to not be distracted from having to find things in menus or submenus, and this being nerve-wracking, that would be negative. Then there's several keyword-sensitive or voice-based research tools, and one can have this in the browser through tools like TemperMonkey. So to optimize keyboard shortcuts, basically, to not be distracted by this, and consume possibly some caffeine, but not too much. Staying hydrated, drinking enough water, yeah, unlocking the power hour to work efficiently for 1 hour when one can perform best. Strategic tips are to have no screens in the bedroom, or in the screens turn up night mode, turn on night mode, so that there's not many blue colors in the evening, which could keep you too much awake, and keep you from being able to fall asleep, especially. So turn off all social media and email notifications. So like, for example, an internet Sabbath once a week can help. The right sleep amount. So you must get enough sleep to optimize for flow. Do enough sports or other daily movements. Biologically, for example, one can optimize for biofeedback engineering and biofield engineering, heart rate variability training, magnetoencephalography. That means one can measure the brain and optimize for brain waves. The galvanic skin response is one. One can optimize for voice and breathing rhythms and analyze this and optimize this, and face expression analysis. So basically optimize all surrounding factors for flow state. Yeah, the first 90 minutes of a day can be important, especially when you're a person who is in a morning type. Otherwise, for evening people, maybe 90 minutes in the evening can be more efficient. Defining one's most important tasks to achieve, and daily gratitude and flossing teeth and other personal hygiene are important. Eliminating flow blockers like distractions, self-sabotage, yeah, unlock pristine clarity about what to work on, making burnout impossible by having a maximum of flow and physical exercise, get beyond the overwhelm fallacy. So meaning eliminate many small tasks so that your to-do list gets less scary, for example, then you don't get easily overwhelmed. Battle stress, have a good time management. Yeah, so the Parkinson's law says the amount of time you give yourself to complete a task is the amount that you at least will take to complete it. So that means that that you should have rocks before small stones, before sand, regarding chunk sizes. So meaning in one's peak hour, so one should work on the big rocks to finish them, and otherwise when a little less concentrated, work of many small things, and develop a positive growth mindset. Then there's some engage questions, how to engage with flow state optimally. So there's different stages like engage and then explore, exploring how you do in flow state, then explain for yourself how you get best into flow state, and it can be analyzed scientifically with fMRI. This is basically brain scanning in these with a cap with electrodes, or so this is in these big hospital scanners. This is with the cap with electrodes, EEGs. And there's questionnaires about flow state where you can optimize it. So, and to know what is the key element, these are first-class flow state triggers. However, they might require some training, meaning with these triggers, people typically get into the deepest, best flow state. However, it might require exercise. So it's most recommendable, but typically most difficult to achieve also. For example, individual short-term triggers are these: meditation, hypnosis, intensively focused attention, certain work or sports, textual journaling, dreaming and or triggering thoughts like in NLP, music and immersive 3D videos, mesmerizing campfire or sunsets, or multimedia about this deep visualizations, this hypnagogia, this flow state before falling asleep, smart drugs, neurofeedback training, transcranial magnetic stimulation. And then there's individual long-term flow state triggers. So meaning these can kick you immediately into flow state. Then these ones kick you not immediately, so in a longer term into flow state, like developing motivation and mastery, like serious concentration on challenging topic, well-visualized public speaking, deep concentrated programming, deep emotional empathy, thinking along, and ahead with people drawing and creating art. And then I put here LU, this means low usefulness. So regarding work outcomes. So you can develop in sports some mastery. However, if you cannot easily write things down in sport and then complete tasks for work in sport. So you can typically use this to optimize for flow state. And the flow state lasts a bit beyond the pure sports. However, being able to be in flow at work is even more useful. Then there's group triggers. So having a shared collective vision of flow and of work results. So short-term things are these, like mesmerizing campfire, multimedia, romantic dreaming, walk in the sunset, ideation techniques, then long-term motivation and mastery, and several group sports. Then there's a possible way how to get into a permanent flow state through a sleep deficit. So an uninterrupted flow state, however, that's difficult and it disrupts sleep cycle. So some people like to do it, and however, do it ideally in your vacation time, because it might disrupt your sleep cycle and you might not be able to to sleep when you should get some sleep. So one schedule is to sleep from, for example, midnight to 2 a.m., then work from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. on research, for example, and typing things, sleep then from 6 to 7 or 8 a.m. for 1 or 2 hours, and then being able to work all day. One can use this especially for playing tennis or listening to special audiobooks, being able to better recognize or understand emotions because of this hyper attentive and emotional state in which one can be through the sleep deficit flow state. So that's a special form. Then there's group flow state with several preconditions. And actually group flow state is the most difficult flow state to achieve, because then everybody in the team must really master flow state and one must synchronize and so on. So there additionally, if people know each other and avoid quarrels and conflicts, have mutual respect and acceptance, that helps shared goals and purposes, like a company team that helps close listening, blending egos, being familiar with each other, building camaraderie and equal participation, open communication, those help. And then there's certain preparatory and synchronization exercises, like walking or marching outside together in the same rhythm, some fitness studio exercises, singing, for example, certain songs together, assigning personal accountability partners to each other to actually do one's exercises, to do breathing exercises, meditative exercises, and hypnotizing ones, basic humor or quick-witted exercises in a group, comedy or play on word brainstorming, gratitude exercise to brainstorm what went well, whom to thank, bringing self-made food or drinks to meetings to get to know people better, what food they like, to laugh together, building trust and so on together, have different people or experts prepare concepts, or part of the solution have that present it instead of having people come unprepared to meetings. And then entrainment of all these techniques. And then there's group supporting conditions like good communication, shared goals, familiarity, equal participation, center of control, close listening, and shared risk. Then there's some types of abstract flow. So there's flow number one is what happens to you. For example, I get praise. Flow number two, what you do to others. You praise, influence them. Flow number three is what happens between others that you are a witness, observer of, or where you are sharing or listening ideas, and what you do to yourself, rewarding oneself. And they're all also aspects of flow state. So the formula for team success is to combine these elements and to also have possibly some diversity, efficient communication, create harmonious synergies, and to optimize for team play. Then there's second-class flow state triggers, and now these group triggers are shown here because now these have also many group elements. So individual short-term triggers in the second class, they get people less deep into flow or lead to a lower quality of flow state typically. However, with training, one can even through these second class triggers get into a first class flow state through mastering this. So generally progressing towards mastery, reading a book that sparks imagination, productive daydreaming, getting carried away, simple repetitive work or leisure activities like this bore-out syndrome, or batch processing of simple things, or long-distance highway driving, or being forced to calm down, like sitting in a sauna, or long-distance train riding, or flying with headphones on, or drug-induced altered states. Then there's meditation, like phases before falling asleep, like this hypnagogia, and cardio sports, like wood chopping, scythe mowing, painting, shamanic or tribal dancing. So this is how basically people in the Middle Ages or so, like tribal dancing, have been accessing flow state. And typical group triggers are deep emotional empathy, listening, for example, to an emotional speech regarding emotional materials, group events like Burning Man or concerts, especially with rising frequencies like crescendos, walking together without having to pay attention to the path, or receiving wellness, massage, or Ayurveda, aromatherapy, and so on. Then there's third-class flow state triggers. Then there's typically only short-term triggers, which, so this is basically entry level, typically what people can access most easily, certain computer games, yoga, watching a TV show, getting carried away, but still a bit destructive or productive, dancing or watching people dance closely, or looking at possible prey animals to hunt. That's probably how our ancestors got into flow state, concert, movie, and so on, elements. Then, yeah, we offer special workflow types. So then there's profession-specific flow states. So that in academic professions and in brain-heavy professions, the key is to learn everything by heart that's relevant for their job, and ideally to visualize it, to not have to look it up. And look up means a distraction, so that you can concentrate on the things that matter without being distracted. And for people practicing a craft, especially, they need to develop mastery, and the craft should be compatible with their passions to then get through the mastery into flow state and use these repetitive same steps to work and get into flow using these steps. Yeah, okay, I'm coming to an end. Yeah. So, and optimize all other preconditions and supporting conditions and best practices in a way that's suitable for this. And also when mastering a craft, one doesn't need to think so deeply about what one is doing, and that allows the mind to drift away and then become creative. So some recommendations it helps to, if it's an activity that you enjoy or feel passionate about, there should be some element of challenge. But you should be able to reach it from your current skill level. You should have a goal and a plan of action, and you should focus on the current moment or problem, not get distracted. You should become an expert on flow yourself. You should, for example, create a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats of yourself, and use primary, secondary senses, and so on. And then have several details. For example, I'll finish with two ideas. So this is like these moving animations help to get into flow state, concentrating on one point with flow state and effect. Neurolinguistic programming, so how to allocate talent is an important element. And so, for example, these technical ways how to optimize for flow, they look like this. And there's certain types of education that help to get into flow. Like, for example, Montessori education helps with that. And the knowledge is power program helps with that. And other techniques like brain-centric design. And one can optimize for e-learning in flow state. And reduce certain things and optimize it in organizations. And so it's good to have critical thinking. However, it's often even better to have creative thinking. For example, instead of saying yes, but to say yes, and then the creative element. And not just use logic, but also intuition. Not just be analytical, but also generative. Not just being convergent, but also divergent. And this is the design thinking process, or the double diamond process, where one first brainstorms divergently and then brings it together towards a strategy, for example. Yeah, or another idea is sleep like a baby, dream like a genius, in this hypnagogic state before falling asleep and in this lucid dreaming. Yeah, and then, for example, visually, one can do a SWOT analysis and can visually think about these elements and extend them. Yeah, and then there's many details. There is something, I'm checking if there's something important. Yeah, these are the summary of the advantages. Up to 490% faster skill acquisition, also up to 430% increase in creative problem solving. Yeah, and for example, there's special meditations we can maybe do in another time for better sleep and to get into flow state. Animations of this type, and then these are turning mesmerizing elements of nature that our ancestors probably used to get into flow. And this is probably how flow developed biologically in our brain, by looking into a campfire together and dreaming about one future, what we plan to do in summer, how to hunt animals, how to go on vacation, what to do together. And also modern architectures sometimes optimized for flow, like these architectures. You see this evokes similar feelings. Yeah, there's different stages of consciousness, and also sleep-related stages of consciousness, and through them one can optimize flow state. Yeah, different levels of consciousness here, and yeah, basically go away from confusion towards unconditional love and co-creation. Is generally the path. Yeah, that's those are the key elements. Then thank you for listening.